Did you know that only 2 Formula One drivers have scored points every single race weekend this season? And while one of the drivers is actually pretty obvious, the second one might surprise you given the way that we have been talking about him this season. This is me giving you a second to drop your guesses below before I tell you the answer. The first driver is obvious. Oscar Piastri is currently our championship leader, has the fastest car on the grid, and yes, has scored points every single race weekend this season. Oscar's lowest finish in a Grand Prix this season was actually P9, and that was the opening race of the season at his home race in Australia. Since then, he has only finished off of the podium one time. Lando, the other McLaren driver, would actually be included in this stat of scoring points every race weekend if it weren't for his DNF in Canada. Max Verstappen, who sits in P3, has a lowest finish of a P10, but also has a DNF on his record because he was crashed into by Kimi Antonelli in Austria. Next in the rankings is George Russell, but both Mercedes actually finished outside of the points in Monaco. And then you have Charles Leclerc, who, after quite bad strategy in Silverstone in the rain, found himself P14 at our last race outside of the points. And surprisingly, the other driver who has scored points every single race weekend is actually Lewis Hamilton. While Lewis Hamilton was disqualified in China alongside the other Ferrari for the Grand Prix, he did win the sprint race that weekend, meaning that Lewis Hamilton is the only other driver outside of Oscar Piastri to score points at every single race weekend for the first half of the season. Lewis Hamilton's worst finish was also in Australia alongside Oscar Piastri. Because the performance at Ferrari has just not been what everyone was hoping it would be, we've been seeing a lot of conversation about Lewis Hamilton's performance being on the negative side this year. But interestingly enough, when you look at his performance throughout the season, it is improving. He starts with a P10 in Australia, and his last 2 races have actually both been a P4 finish. And while his teammate Charles Leclerc has outscored him this season and has even made it to the podium, which Lewis hasn't yet, something that's important to remember is that this car was developed before Lewis got here, meaning that the first car that Lewis really helps develop is going to be the 2026 car. And by all accounts, Charles Leclerc should be outperforming Lewis in this car. This car was developed with Charles Leclerc's help. He's been a part of this team for years. He's familiar with the team, the engineers, the way it runs, and of course the car. There is not an adjustment period coming from a different team, especially with Lewis, a team that he has been a part of for so long. And so sometimes when we talk about stats, we're obviously looking for things to analyze, but this one in particular, these 2 drivers that have scored points every single race weekend this season, has been an interesting one because it actually highlights the fact that Lewis Hamilton is doing pretty well at adjusting to this team. Maybe not as fast as he wants to be, maybe not as fast as Ferrari wants him to be, and maybe not as fast as the narrative of him being a champion and the fans would want him to, but he is actually pulling out some real consistency. I do think it points to a potential positive turn for future seasons, and that maybe if you can hold on to a little bit of that Ferrari delusion, you may see a strong season for him next year. But I'm curious what you think. Is there a positive turn for Lewis in the second half of this season, and does the team find a way to gel with a 7-time world champion and get him that 8th championship?